do that?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you saw me walk across the...
Between Tuesday and now, yeah.
Hey, are we ready back there?
And now it reconnected, no problem.
No pizza? I already had 4 pieces in 37 seconds. Okay. That's how I ate pizza. And chips and salsa.
Mine was gone as quick as yours.
Fine. That's fine. Or maybe text
I'm not catching you.
Cam and make sure we're
It's a lot of feedback.
What?
I just have to go turn on
Static.
line spoiler.
Yeah. Usually do this when the room is quiet.
Okay.
Shall we try again?
Where do they live?
Oh, money?
Just right here.
Oh, I know. We just
Yeah, so
blew
it's
it
not
off.
like
Regular
I can be
meeting,
back. I just gotta turn it on and watch it.
public hearing, Basalt Town Council on the Basalt Master Plan, Thursday, February 27th, 2020.
Perfect.
Did that work?
Perfect.
You heard
Yep.
it? Okay, great.
Perfect. Thank you.
We are live. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to the special meeting and public hearing for the master plan. We've been working on this for somebody.
About 9 months, since
Is that
March.
all? Okay, I think it's 9 years. She says 9 months. And we have taken a lot of public comment out there in the world, but we are wanting to just, do a little bit more of that just to make sure everybody's on board of where we are now. So I guess we need to still call this meeting to order at 6:05 and ask for a roll call. Sarah,
Okay,
you're new at this, I know.
I am. Thank you. Jackie Whitsett,
Yes.
Gary Tannenbaum,
Here?
Bill Infante, Katie Schwarer,
She's here. She's here.
Jassar, yes. Thank you. Auden Schindler,
Not here.
Jen Riffle, Ryan Slack.
Thank you very much. Okay, once again, it's the town council consideration of adoption of the 2020 Basalt Master Plan, and our presenters, moderators, helpers are going to be Ryan Mahoney and Susan Philp. So I'm just going to kick it over to you.
Okay, well, what differs with this meeting is this is the first formal public hearing that we've been having on the master plan. And we're gonna have a presentation tonight from Heather Henry from Connect One Design, who's part of the consultant team, and she's gonna just briefly summarize all the public input. But since we did the big outreach for public input, the P&Z and the town council have been having work sessions on the master plan and on the draft master plan, but we haven't really had an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the master plan, and so that's what this is. And what we're going to be doing tonight is I'm going to be turning it over to Heather Henry. She's going to walk us through the process, and this presentation is really for the public. We're filming this meeting, and it's really not for the town council, so because you know everything that we're going to be going over. And then you will open the public comment period, and then once that's completed, with the remaining time, we can have some council discussion. And our goal was not to have the meeting continue on beyond 8 o'clock. And then we really are looking for a motion to continue the public hearing until March 10th.
Okay.
And Heather will go a little bit over the schedule from there. And so Heather's going to do the main presentation, and I might add or clarify things as we go along. So Heather?
Before Heather starts, I kind of failed to say thank you very much for coming. This is night work, and it's very hard to do when it's winter and cold, and maybe you'd rather be home eating dinner. So thank you so much for taking your time to come down here and either comment or listen to what's going on with the master plan.
Thanks, Heather.
All right, thanks. Thank you, guys. Thank you to the public. As Susan mentioned, some of this presentation, you all will have seen the substance of pretty much all of it, but we are starting kind of at the beginning of this presentation, meaning the beginning of this process to summarize where we've been and a little bit where we're going next. So, welcome to the presentation of the 2020 Master Plan. Talking a little bit about how we've got to where we are right now. So the little footprints are where we started with our plan kickoff, which actually was in March. So we're at about 11 months of kind of full-blown boots on the ground. So we have gone through a whole series of efforts around data analysis, gathering previous plans, public outreach, etc. And we are now, if any of you were there, this open house number 4 was last fall in November. And so since that point, we have been drafting the plan and kind of working on review and revising that plan with the council and PNC, and even neighboring PNCs with Eagle County and Pickens County, et cetera. So quite a few months have been kind of cycling right here in this part. So what we hope to have is by the end of March, we are past this. We have a final plan, which is your community vision, and that's the Basalt Master Plan 2020. Okay, so we're going to go through a little bit. This is what we call our placemat. So it's up on the wall in a big format. We've had it up on the wall in an 11 by 17 format. This was our infographic summary of what we did in 2019 to gather public input from a lot of different places that informed this plan, beyond just the data, beyond previous plans, et cetera. So you can tell we talked a little bit about how we got the word out. So how did people know where they could give input, how they could attend meetings, et cetera. What did we do? So these were all the different just straight up meetings that we had. Open houses, we had a Spanish as primary language speaking picnic. We had a work session at the high school. We had our website up this entire time. We had a survey on that website. We had over, actually, 10 small group sessions. So you could see there was a lot of different effort. In those meetings, how did we gather input? A lot of different ways that we gathered input. From that, just in 2019, the information that we started to feed into the plan was almost 5,000 what we're calling data points. So we'll kind of advance. But just talking a little bit about the advertising, how did we work to get the word out, et cetera, and what were our goals? So we really wanted to boost traffic to the website, make sure people could respond to the survey, and then in general, just increase the attendance at the open houses. So you could see all the different ways that we did that. We got the word out, et cetera. So that was all through 2019. From that effort, I know you can't read this, so I'm just going to tell you what this is. So what we did with those 5,000 data points was basically we started to aggregate those into themes. So what was the community saying? And if you took each of those data points and you kind of put them into buckets of ideas. And so these were the themes. And so you had, this is about our top 10 or so things that came from the community where in all the 5,000 data points, how many times were those things mentioned? And then you kind of have all the way at the bottom, you know, maybe 1 or 2 times some of those themes were mentioned, okay? So from that, what were the top 10 things? And that's what you see here. And so on our infographic, that's what you see right here at the bottom was all those top 10 things and where were they mentioned. Now, you'll notice there's a connection between all of this input and then kind of that direct connection, especially to 2 different primary places in the master plan, goals and objectives, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, and then our project list. So what was the community kind of saying they wanted to see happen, and how did we make that connection between this input and the plan? And I know this is a ton of information, you guys. We have like a lot to get through in 15 minutes, so hopefully at the end you guys will be able to, you know, ask any questions that you want. So now I'm going to show you the master plan. So how all of that work started to culminate into the actual draft master plan. This is the cover. Yay.
So this is the table of contents. The master plan as you see it, the draft that's on the website right now for review, what we're calling the referral draft, and that has gone out to refer agencies and that P&Z and council has been working on. This is the table of contents from that document. It's broken into 3 parts. So the first part is really all about the introduction. And remember the audience for the master plan. It's not just existing citizens in Basalt, but it's anyone kind of coming to Basalt to visit, to look at possibly doing a project here, moving a business here, investing in the community. So sometimes you all might read the part 1 introduction and think, well, duh, I knew that about my community. But there's another audience, so we always have to kind of remember that audience. The other part of part 1 is just the background, how many documents we reviewed leading up to putting all of this into your culminating document. This does essentially supersede, say, the 2007 master plan, amendments that might have happened. And so we have to put a lot of background into this. Part 1, you'll see, summarizes a lot of that information. Part 2 starts to build the planning framework. So the planning framework includes everything from our vision statement, which we also have up on the wall right here, to the plan elements, which I'm going to show you in a couple minutes, and the goals and objectives. So these are more written parts of the plan, textual elements that talk a little bit about the vision, you know, flying at a pretty high level. Where do we want to be and go, and what do we want to be thinking about, especially in the next 10 years, which is about the time frame, roughly. You like to keep about a 10-year planning horizon on your master plan. So that's part 2. Part 3 is what we call the implementation. So that's where you start to get some fun graphics, the future land use plan, primary key parcels, the list of projects. What do we need to actually be working on? So that's a pretty meaty portion of the document. And then you'll see in our plan, there's an awful lot of information and a whole bunch of appendices. If you really want to sleep at night, you're welcome to download most of those appendices and try and work your way through those, because it's, you know, anywhere from 400 pages on Appendix A1 to, I don't know, 1,000 pages on some of the others. But a lot of that is the background information that went into this document. So what we're going to look at next are the plan elements. So you will see the master plan in part 2 and throughout is organized into these value-oriented themes. So these are really, you know, distinct to Basalt. What are the things that we're thinking about, again, in thematic categories? Civic services, workplace and the economy, affordable, inclusive living. We heard that so much in the community input. And then you have things like regional growth and annexation. Well, this is about your 3-mile planning area. How do we coordinate with the entities around us, et cetera. And then really those focus areas, you can see it's community environment, the economy, and kind of the built environment. So environment meaning the what we think of traditionally is that sustainability part, and the built environment being how do we want to grow, where do we want to grow, et cetera. And so you kind of see how those master plan themes are this back and forth dialogue between those two places. Goals and objectives, we do have these printed out up here on the wall. Any of you that may have attended the fall open house, you saw a draft of those goals and objectives and were able to comment on those. So here we have just summarized your overall theme and then the initial goals. You will see in that document that these pages are probably around 20 pages, because each goal, say goal 1.1, is broken down into a whole series of objectives. Really dense part of this document. This also provides a strong correlation between the strategic work plan developed by the City Council and this master plan. So this is a place where everyone starts to get involved in those objectives. How can I, as a citizen or a nonprofit or someone moving to town, actually be involved in some of those objectives and what we want to move forward? So this is two pages of all of the themes and the initial goals. Again, not summarizing all the objectives. Okay, so now we're going to get into part 3, which is the implementation. Really, much of the implementation, the first thing that you see is the future land use plan. So this is all about land uses. Again, this is a policy document. So this is supported by your zoning code. You have zone districts that are appropriate zone districts that fall under these land uses. But these are a higher level than that. They talk about policy and what land uses might be appropriate where. Again, very tiny, but hopefully you get the idea. We'll zoom in a little bit on some of these. So we have the way we've broken it into the document, and usually when we present this, just so people can actually read it, is we talk a little bit about West Basalt and East Basalt and the land use plan. So this is our West Basalt future land use plan and East Basalt future land use plan. We can come back to these, but Susan, if you want anything specific on these, or keep blowing and going, and then we'll come back if we need to.
I think that at the end, we'll circle back to this map a little bit.
That was sort of what I was thinking. Okay, great. Okay, so in this effort, really determined early on for us as the consultant was to think about what were primary and key parcels within Basalt proper, let's say. Now, what these parcels are that you'll probably take note of is there really some parcels that are important to the potential growth of Basalt. And so there are areas that might be prime for redevelopment or potential for development, et cetera. And so they were ones that we focused on to really determine what could happen there, what did the community want to see happen there, planning and zoning, council, et cetera. So these are particular parcels that were studied throughout. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit. So the way we did this throughout the process, there we go. So throughout the input early on in 2019, we had 3 open houses in the spring and then another in the fall. We were kind of narrowing down on the information on these key and primary parcels throughout that process, where in the fall, folks that attended actually saw some design ideas for those parcels. Now, the important thing that we were looking to do with that was to get a sense of what did people want to see, what types of land uses, maybe how much density, what kind of density, and things like that. So from that, the way we have now approached in kind of the referral document and that document which is in front of Council and P&C right now, is we have talked about these parcels having kind of range of densities, okay? And with that, what we're looking at is this idea also of density bonuses or incentives. So how do you incent people to develop those properties in ways that meet a lot of the ideas and vision for the community? So this document that you see here, you'll see how this is kind of an overall idea of what themes could we actually translate into those incentives, okay? So for example, if someone were to develop a parcel and think about doing, you know, a significant child care facility and provide that facility to the community, well, we would love to incent that. And so perhaps we can do that through things like density bonuses. And so we pulled everything we could out of the plan and the themes and the goals and objectives and the projects that you'll see later that we could build into the parcels. So right now we're going to show you how we're approaching that really boots on the ground for some of those key parcels. So the first parcel we'll look at is called, we could do the map first just so everyone, nope. Does this still work on? Oh, yeah, okay. So we'll look at, this is called the Jadwin Stott parcel. So this is a parcel of land. If you look down here, here's Midland. This is the post office, the library, Midland Park, Roaring Fork River. This is downstream to Down Valley. So this is that kind of entire parcel adjacent to that. That was one of the primary parcels that was studied pretty significantly. So the way we're approaching this is with kind of a generalized land use idea of what could occur on that parcel, and then sort of a series of baseline things. So here are the got-tos for this particular parcel. if you come in, you want to develop it, there are certain things that you have to do, non-negotiable, etc. And so those are summarized here. And then the idea is if I wanted to think about more density, or I'd like to do, affordable housing in excess of this baseline density, could I do that? And so we've started to look on each of those parcels with what we're calling kind of, what could I do, the additional projects to receive more density. And so each of these primary parcels are looking at that approach, okay? So for example, this is how it's being summarized right now. These you will not see in the draft plan that's published online. These are hot on the presses, working documents that we're working through with P&Z and council. And as soon as these are finalized, they'll be rolled into that final document, okay? So this is how we're approaching it. Here's a minimum density. Here are the design principles that are important to that particular parcel. We need to make sure that we don't want just large spread out lots. That is a place for density. It's close to transit, it's close to downtown. It can bring the vibrancy that we're looking for in Old Town, etc. So you know what? We're gonna highly discourage a larger single family lot type approach. Smaller building sizes at the western edge. So it kind of reduces in density as you get away from, say, the post office and the library and some of these community services. So those would be the design principles that are important. What are the required improvements? Okay, so what are the baseline things that I have to do on this property? And then where could I get to if I was looking at increased density? What might it be? So if I were a developer, I can also understand a top end on this lot. This is the maximum that could kind of possibly happen. And then these were the next pieces, the got-tos, incentives, etc. Okay?
So maybe just clarify on this one is, we had a work session with the town council on Tuesday night where the town council gave direction that they liked this approach. The town council didn't necessarily sign off on the bookend. So one of the big discussion items is, should we give a density range? And the council was, yes, we should, to give direction to everyone about what we're expecting. They didn't necessarily, on this particular one, had a density range of 80 to 180, and the council hasn't necessarily signed off. Those are quite the right numbers, but we should be getting to that point pretty soon.
That's right. So that's kind of the hot on the presses. It's not even off the presses yet. But this is the process that we're using to then kind of talk through those ranges and which incentives are appropriate for which sites. So we're at 17 minutes. So what I'm going to do is not necessarily go through each of these, but you will see which parcels we have been approaching with this kind of process. So south side with a minimum density and an increased density, important design principles, the improvements that are required, and then what are some of the incentives that could get you to a higher density. This is the diagram. Again, what we're doing here, if some of you were at our last open house in the fall, you would have seen some more detail on these. What we wanted to do now is kind of back off from that. What we don't want to do in the master plan is design the parcels. We want to make sure that there are brackets around what can be done there, and then allow the creativity of someone that comes in for a project to come through. Next is the Meyer property. Again, a minimum density.
No, actually, this one's a little different. So why don't you go back to the future land use map on
Sure.
this one?
Go back to the PDF then.
Well, on the Meyer ranch, if
Can we
you
just go to the picture?
no, go to well, that's fine to go to that picture. So here's the Meyer property, and just as history, why don't you just point out the 17 acres?
Sure.
This 17 acres is currently in the Basalt master plan for 100, in the 2007 plan for about 143 units. In a little bit different configuration. The map's right behind me. This property's probably had recently a lot of focus. When it left the P&Z originally, when it left them for a recommendation to town council, I had about 104 units. after the town council had concerns about, growth and the number of units that we were permitting on the plan, the P&Z had looked at it at their last meeting and in kind of this direction from the town council about, okay, let's have some bookends. So we presented that recommendation for significantly lesser density on the Meyer property. But after staff got thinking about it, talked to some other planners, and talked about the entirety of the Meyer Ranch property. So if you're looking at the Meyer Ranch property, some of this is in town, and if we were on the future land use map, I'd show you, but this goes all the way here, and then goes all the way up. That is actually in town.
The black line is
Yeah, the
town
black line.
boundary.
So this area is in town, you're kind of north of Cemetery Road here, and then this other area is all unincorporated, Picken County, including that 17 acres. So where we ended up on this property is, when we circle back to the future land use map, which is right here, our recommendation is on the plan is to keep the urban growth boundary the way it is, which kind of comes along the edge of Elk Run and then goes around the Roaring Fork Club.
The red
This is
line.
The red line here, this is where the affordable housing units were just built, and they're building the cabins. Leave the urban growth boundary line there, and leave, one of the things that kind of came up with discussions is maybe we should have a buffer between Elk Run and any development over here. So we have this spruce buffer and then a park and this community facility. To leave that on, but the future land use map that's here, that Heather showed you at the beginning, actually kind of shows this area in gray. And then the idea is that there's a couple parcels that we're recommending we continue to show as gray, and that we would do a joint study with Picken County on what the arrangement of land uses should be in a more comprehensive way. And this is similar to what, Heather didn't talk about it, but we're also doing this, it's called the PBJ area, it's Picken County Basalt Junction, and it's the Holland Hills, Lazy Glen, Old Snowmass area. And we're saying in that area that we need more time to do some study and determine the right land uses. We do the similar thing here, jointly with Picken County Community Development and Picken County, to figure out the right set of land uses in the unincorporated Picken County area. Maybe look at some conservation, and just spend more time on it. What the plan would show is, for the area that is in town, this is Bee Hill here, that we would show the opportunity for 5 kind of rural lots here. That would be for family members. And then it shows this buffer area between the Elk Run homes and this. So that's the current discussion. That's what we talked to the council about on Tuesday. That was well received. And we can talk more about that later, but that's what's being shown for the Meyer property.
Then our one of the last properties of interest that is kind of in those same discussions is the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park. What would that transition to? And so this is currently what's being shown in the future land use plan.
Yeah, so actually, let me step back on that one too. So Heather wasn't at our meeting on Tuesday, so let's go to this. Here's the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park. There's another parcel here that's owned by the Stott property, and then there's a sliver that's owned by a Basalt development company. And what our current recommendation is, as shown on that gray map that's here, so what we talked about Tuesday night was leaving, flip to I'm the one that controls this. So what the map is showing now, when it came out of our discussion on Tuesday, is to leave this open space on the map, but show this area also in gray, and kind of a recognition of a couple things. One is just the importance of the area that's served as existing affordable housing. And second, that before redevelopment ever occurs, we need to do a lot more work to figure everything out, particularly the replacement housing issues, and later maybe the town council can add comments on that. So the current suggestion is this is another parcel that would be shown as gray on the future land use map.
And so the intention of this gray is that it will be connected with this section that shows the process that we did before. So here are the approximate land uses, here are the brackets on density, here are the incentives, et cetera. That gray land use is associated with properties that we've gone through, and it's important to kind of understand they are within the urban growth boundary, but they are not annexed into the town. So that gray land use is kind of about, this is an area where you will want to early on engage in the discussion and use as a guide the portions of the master plan that you see that put a bracket on that particular parcel. So that's kind of what this gray land use
Yeah, except it will for the, just to kind of emphasize a little more on that, it will for the Jadwin and for South Side, but it won't for the Meyer property or the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park. And we weren't gonna go through that just for questions.
So these we can look at later. This is kind of giving that assessment for the council of kind of total units. What does it look like? Where are those opportunities, et cetera. Last, just because we're already at 25, I'll go back to the PDF and show you kind of the last piece, let's say, of I think it's like second to the last in the last slide. Projects. I told you out of this entire process, I think we came up with about 47-ish projects that the community came and said, this should happen, this would be great, wouldn't this be nice, etc. In the fall open house, we actually bracketed those projects for the community into what kind of investment would they take. You know, what projects could you accomplish for under $100,000? What could you accomplish for, you know, 100 to a $500,000 kind of thing? And we put those in buckets, and then we allowed the community to vote on some of those projects. So out of that, we have a top 13 projects. And you can see as we look at the themes that came out, right? And then the projects that got ranked the highest, there's kind of this direct correlation. So what happens now is you can also see this correlation between that and the strategic work plan. And so these are projects that council and others within the town will be looking at to think about moving forward in the next 10 years. And how do we accomplish those? Some with, you know, partnerships with different people, others with perhaps grant money and things like that. Okay, so those may be accomplished in a whole number of different ways. All right, lastly is our schedule. We're here, ta-da, Thursday, February 27th. This is our council public hearing. Again, you'll see a number of meetings. These are just the meetings that have kind of occurred after the fall open house and once the draft plan has actually come out. So that's what you see before today. And then after today, we have continued public hearing and we have continued work sessions between PNC and council looking for ultimate adoption by the end of March.
That's all.
I'm gonna cut it off there.
Yep, I think that's a good place to cut.
That was pretty good. It's close to 15.
It's like 11 months in 28 minutes and 30 seconds. It's pretty good, right?
It's excellent. So Susan, what's,
Well, I think this is, unless any of the counselors want to make a comment, I think this is a time really to open it up for public comment. And we won't be responding. This will be like a normal public hearing where people will be coming up to the mic, introducing themselves. And I would just ask, I'm going to go around, I'm going to hand out the sign-in sheet, and I really appreciate it if everybody that's here could sign that in. And then if we have time at the end, we might answer any questions that come up, but we're not going to have a discussion.
thanks, boss.
We're not going to have a discussion with the folks at the mic. It's a regular public hearing.
Right, okay. So This is public hearing, so if anybody would like to come up and make comments regarding the master plan as you're seeing it this evening, please do. I'm gonna wait until one person comes up. Bernie, break the ice.
I hope if the 3 minutes is up, I don't just get cut off abruptly, but I'm Bernie Grauer, and I'm a resident of Elk Run. I am also a member of the Planning Commission, but I am not speaking for the Planning Commission. I'm speaking as a member and as a resident, and we in Elk Run are very concerned about the traffic impacts of the Meyer Ranch. We have one already bottleneck exit and entrance onto 82 at a very slow stoplight, which this summer we found ourselves waiting 2 and 3 times lights to just get onto 82. So for those 70% of us who work up in Aspen, getting out and accessing transportation to Aspen is not a game. This is our livelihoods, and I would say as a member of the Planning Commission that we looked at the original recommendations and we realized we hadn't considered traffic impacts, and that's why we've revised. So our current recommendation is the range of about 20 as a minimum and about 40 with a bonus provided benefits were given to the town. And I would say that this is in keeping as a member of the Planning Commission, and this recommendation was adopted as a supermajority on Tuesday, what I'm talking about, the Meyer Ranch, and we accepted the rest of the recommendations. We think they are good compromises. They allow for growth, and they position growth where we want it, which is the downtown, near density, near mass transit, near public institutions like the library, stores, and so on. And they have easy entrance onto 82. We don't think any significant growth is justified in the Meyer Ranch area. That seems to be the very definition of suburban sprawl. And the 3 big ideas for our plan were curtail suburban sprawl, enhance density, and something else that was good along those lines of densifying the downtown and not expanding in the periphery. And I will say Pitkin County already has very good growth control for preserving its ranches. That 17-acre parcel would only be allowed 1 large house, and we're looking at 20 to 40 under our recommendation. So we are willing to make some accommodation for the desire to develop a bit, but we feel that both the principles that we outlined in this master plan to you and the actual facts of the traffic on the ground only allow for a very modest amount of development. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernie. Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. My name's Tom Newland. I live at 417 Original Road in town, and I'm representing both myself today and the Myers Ranch. First, I'd like to say that town staff and consultants have been good to work with through this process. They've listened to the ranch's concerns and made some changes to the plans to reflect them. The staff recommendation to work with Pitkin County to make a more comprehensive approach to development on the property is an acceptable way forward, given the circumstances. I do want to caution everyone that there needs to be an adequate amount of density on that 17-acre parcel to even make it viable for development. The unit counts batted around by Bernie here and others during the process are really not realistic given the valley's current development climate. One of the perceptions that I've heard during this process claimed that congestion would increase to unacceptable levels on East Two Rivers Road at the Colorado Highway 82 intersection if any development is approved on the Myers parcel. I gotta tell you, congestion is a complicated problem. You can't solve it by implementing one uncoordinated solution, such as denying development because it's too close to a congested intersection. In fact, if you widen your focus and really look at the problem, you'll realize that traffic will increase at that intersection with new development on any of the primary parcels, not just the Meyer parcel. You see, even the best transit system can only hope to reduce the number of vehicles on the road by at most 10%. And by the way, the national average is 3. Most people with school children living on any of the primary parcels, they won't be taking transit. They'll be doing like everybody else does, dropping their kids off at the school and then adding to the backup at the signal. My point is that the master plan is not the way to address traffic and congestion. What's needed is an integrated transportation plan that combines transit, biking, walking, and capital improvements, and does so by considering the community's visions and values. The Meyer parcel can offer many benefits to the community that shouldn't be ignored through this process. Affordable starter homes where children can walk to school and families can walk or bike to downtown for the Sunday market or for a place to eat at night. Recreation opportunities like the town pool and the Albany Kennel Trail are close and nearby and actually easier to access by trail without a car. And the community facility being proposed, that parcel would be ideal for a child care facility, an after-school hangout, even a community gardens. If the goal is to reduce growth, I think it should be accomplished in an equitable fashion that allows a level of density to float based on how the development can enhance our quality of life. The master plan, as currently drafted, seems to provide that flexibility, and if appropriately utilized through the development process, can benefit both the town and the property owner. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Others? Jerry Twilliger.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to your citizens. I'm Jerry Terwilliger. I live on Homestead Drive in Basalt, East Basalt. Some people call it Old Basalt. I keep wondering why this process is going so fast, why it's being rushed along, and I also wonder if it really is necessary. I mean, I agree with a lot of you who have already expressed an opinion that of concerns. What is the carrying capacity of this valley? What are you going to do about all those Highway 82? I mean, it's bumper to bumper, light to light during rush hours. And why weren't the citizens given less dense options in all these choices? What's going to be the quality of life? What's going to be the impact of that? Quite a few of you have raised these questions. And I just don't know why they're not being addressed. Instead of addressing development here and development there, why aren't you addressing those questions first? And take the master plan that's been proposed, in my opinion, put it through the shredder. I'm sorry, but I think putting it, all these proposals were brought about by an out-of-town consultant who was not familiar with the town, not familiar with the valley, and seems like all these out-of-town consultants or even in-town consultants are growth-oriented. There is a carrying capacity. There's, some development perhaps should be allowed, especially in Clark's Market. Hopefully we don't make the same mistake they made with that building east there, where if you're walking along the Frying Pan River, you suddenly become part of the Tipsy Trout folks having lunch or dinner because it's so close to the river. When I look at the Frying Pan pictures for Clark's Market, those buildings are too close. That's another kind of off the topic here. So anyhow, you've heard my very strong opinions and negative ones mostly here, but thank you for listening and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jerry.
Hi, I'm Trish Meyer, 23655 Two Rivers Road, Basalt. Well, what I was gonna say, I guess I just want to say I never really see much traffic at that light. I don't know if I'm not there at the exact right time, but I just don't see backup there. I think that's really, being overplayed here. I think it's a great location. We've always felt that it's a gift to the community, really, because it's a wonderful place to live. Our kids walked to school. The police station is right over the fence. How can that be sprawl? The town owns that, it's right there. What else? You can get right on the highway and go up Valley if you're not going to take transit. We walk to the bus all the time. And we could have a bike station, for that matter. HOA from Elk Run, I know, sent out a letter, and I don't know if there might have been questions among some of those people who received that. I know, of course, Bernie knows what's going on, but I think there were some questions about if there was going to be, I don't see a map here, but in the area below the cemetery, some people were concerned that that was where the development was going to be. But we wouldn't do development there because, at this point anyway, because of the flooding issues, which I could address. But I think that's for another time, maybe, where we could look at the original lay of the land and the flooding issues that have occurred because of what's been done excavation-wise, cutting away in Elk Run. So anyway, I wanted to thank the staff for helping and us and clarifying this information. I know Susan's been working to do that for people who call about, especially about that flooding. So I know that's a tangent, but thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Trish. Hi, Robbie.
Hi, I'm Robbie Darcy. I live in Willits, but I've lived in Basalt for a very long time, and I remember when Elk Run was being developed, and I have some concerns about the not in my backyard mentality. Elk Run is built, we have our homes, and then close the door. And I would caution everyone to not keep that mentality.
Thanks, Robbie. Hello.
I'm Jessica Meyer. My address is 23651 Two Rivers Road, and I'm a teacher with the Roaring Fork School District. The information I'm going to provide to you tonight comes from our Human Resources Department. The definition of community sustainability used in our district is that children born in this valley stay and then raise their own children here too. We use this definition because the number one determinant of success in school is teacher longevity. It has a more profound effect on test scores, academic achievement, and student happiness than any of the other success factors combined. Unfortunately, Basalt schools are suffering from 30% turnover each year, compared to the 18% overall in our district and 10% in other districts in our state. In the exit surveys, the number one reason for teachers leaving is the affordability of housing in our area. Despite the recruitment success of the affordable housing projects, the number of teachers leaving our district has risen sharply, up to 70 to 90 teachers leave each year. It costs a lot to hire a new teacher. The district spends up to $5.5 million each year on recruitment, money that could be spent on hiring more teachers if some of us could afford to stay. Based on mid-level earnings, the 80% of us teachers who do not live in the affordable housing units are spending 2 out of every $3 they earn just on rent. Currently, only 1/3 of Basalt teachers actually live in Basalt. The district has done everything that they can to help this situation. They have spent $20 million on 60 affordable rental units, prioritized increasing our salaries, and the school board has even given up dinner at their meetings to scrape up a few more dollars for teachers. To help with retention, the original affordable housing plan was that teachers would be able to buy their units after 5 years of renting, except that it's been 4 years and not one teacher has applied to buy their house next year. Because of increased appraisals, it is not financially feasible. Our teachers are already working in our community, and we would very much like to live here too. So I would now like to address 2 of the questions that have come up in recent council meetings. The first one is, Basalt schools do have the capacity for more students. Enrollment in Basalt is flat and trending downward. According to the district housing study, the current number of children per family in Basalt is only 1.7 and decreasing. I would also like to clarify that the school improvement bond money was not spent on making any of our district schools larger. It only covered repairs and security improvements to make our schools safer for our students. So in conclusion, all of our civil servants deserve to live and thrive in the town that they work in. They deserve to be able to purchase a home that they can improve, and they deserve to have the opportunity to invest in our community. How can we ask our citizens to become involved in this community and even this master plan process if they feel they cannot afford to live in our town for more than a few years or even at all? Thank you.
Jessica, nice job. Others?
My name is Cassie Meyer-Eaton. I live at 277 Summit Drive.
Was it Kathy?
Cassie.
Cassie.
I was born and raised on the Meyer Ranch. I attended Basalt schools and grew up in this small community, as did my husband, Riley Ian. We are very fortunate to be back, living and working in the community as a speech therapist and engineer. I've heard many people say they would like their children to be able to move back to the area. The consultants for the master plan asked Basalt High School students if they would like to stay or return. A lot of them said they could not envision how they could move back after college, and they are right. Due to a lack of affordable housing, moving back to the valley is unrealistic for many young people. As you know, this town desperately needs more affordable housing and starter homes. This would bring vitality back and create a balanced community. I can tell you it is not easy for young people to move back and work and live in the area, unless they start out doing so in their parents' basement, as both my parents and in-laws can attest to. I know growth and development are feared, but a certain amount of change is a given. If the growth is done in a thoughtful, mutually beneficial way to provide for things that are lacking, it would benefit the community. The Meyer family and town have been trying to work towards a possible future plan that would meet the needs of our family and benefit the community. This would include a civic space, which would be an excellent opportunity for a much-needed daycare and after-school program. It would also include affordable housing and parks. The Meyer Ranch is actually very close to town. As a child, I walked to school every day. It is only a third of a mile away. I walked to the old library during the summers and later to downtown Basalt to meet up with friends. We are surrounded on 2 sides by the Roaring Fork Club and Elk Run. Members of both consistently bike and walk to town. If a development was to happen, it would provide an infill of development on a small portion of the ranch. This would not be suburban sprawl. If we do not allow growth of any kind, I believe it will create a community of retirees, second homeowners, and the rich. The small town community will become no more, as young families cannot afford to live here. The master plan will remain only a vision, and affordable housing, community spaces, and vitality in Basalt will not be realized. I am in support of approving the master plan with flexibility to address the needs of the community at the given time and allow for collaboration between entities. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. Others? Hi.
My name is Riley Eaton. I live at 277 Summit Drive. And I'm also here in support of the Meyer family. I think I'm the last one, so don't worry.
No worries. Hey, this is what we're here for. Are you John Eaton's?
Depends which John Eaton you're talking about. Funny talker John Eaton? That's my dad.
Well, you look
Yes.
like, okay.
Yes. So like I said, my name is Riley Eaton. I'm a licensed civil engineer by profession, and I'd like to first just comment quickly on the traffic concerns. I've studied traffic, took courses on it in class, had to study it for the PE, and I can tell you that it is a complicated issue. No one likes sitting in traffic, but it's not always as simple as just forcing less people to be where you think the traffic is the worst. I mean, we all know people who are driving from Rifle, from Newcastle, from Glenwood. Each person who's driving from up there is going to make that light that's in question take longer to turn because there's more cars on Highway 82. So I would just caution jumping to the conclusion that just because less people are getting on at that exact intersection is going to mean that it's going to go faster. I'd also like to address some of the concerns I've heard about open space. The Meyer family also is very concerned about the open space issue. They share the concern just like everyone else in this valley. We all like our open space. The only difference is the Meyers are intimately acquainted with the costs that come along with keeping that open space open. The amount of, or not even proposed, but in the master plan, the amount of land that is being talked about developed is 17 acres. 17 acres of the 180 acres they own, which equates to about 9%. Of that 9%, about a quarter in the master plan proposal is going to stay open space and community facilities. So you're looking at 6 to 7% of open space being used to help support keeping the other 94% open. In the last few meetings, and this one as well, we've heard a lot about giving these incentives for community members who go above and beyond with contributions to the community. And I think between the 4 acres of that 17 that was being proposed for community improvements to go along with the over 40 acres that they've given in the past for the water tower, Fisherman's Park, the riverfront access, I'm just not sure you're going to find a family that's given more to the community than the Meyer family. That's all I got.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Riley. We're offering incentives to come up and talk because we have candy right here behind us. We did have it behind us. It's right there. You're certainly encouraged to come up and comment if you'd like to. But if you're tired of doing that, then we will close the public hearing and go to council. So, Susan, is there anything else that we should have for consideration, or are we good?
You know, I think that if any council, you know, this, I was trying to think if there's anything that maybe, you know, I should clarify. And, you know, one thing maybe that's useful to point out is one of the reasons that we wanted Heather to give that presentation about all the good stuff is in the plan, because we always end up focusing on a couple parcels. So there's really a lot of really good goals and objectives in the plan. And we didn't mention that we have an entire section on, you know, ways of trying to meet our green goals of the town. So I really don't want to lose track of that. I think maybe if one thing I just want to really point out is that the master plans that we've had, that we have on the wall, the reason that we put them on the wall is really in the last 20 years, our master plans really haven't really changed that significantly. In terms of where the urban growth boundary is and where the land uses are, this plan shows a lot less density in the western portions of the area. And one of the interesting things is that I think our open houses were really well representative of the community in terms of how many people were coming from kind of the Willits area. But it was really interesting that everybody was focusing on East Basalt, no matter kind of where they lived. And that was kind of an interesting thing, because the projects that people identified that are on the list and the key parcels are all in East Basalt. And one of the reasons was originally this idea came up that people wanted, you know, density over sprawl, and they wanted downtown to be vibrant. You know, there's a lot of thing about vibrancy and having community spaces where people could interact. And the infrastructure in West Basalt is in really good shape, and we've got really new development. And so I think people were kind of seeing the needs in East Basalt. But, you know, kind of refocusing that There's less density there. We showed less density kind of where the tree farm is, because we're reflecting the plan that the county ended up approving. We showed less density in Elgibel, and then we were kind of focusing on those key parcels. So the other thing I would just point out to Jerry is that in some ways, this plan, if you didn't adopt a plan, you're under the 2007 plan. So, just kind of keep that in mind, that the more the plan can kind of guide what kind of development we have, and more, maybe this plan adds a lot more specificity in terms of what is it that we want to see out of developments. I don't know that I necessarily want to go down the kind of debating about talking about capacity, because that is a really tough thing, because I think where the council ended up, they haven't really concluded on this. And I know a lot of people would like to say, what is the capacity of Basalt? But the capacity of Basalt, if you're relying on experts, ends up being a lot bigger than I think that we would show on our plan. That it would be bigger, that you can, Basalt is very well, East Basalt and West Basalt are very well positioned in terms of water, traffic, using that as a threshold. I lived in South Florida, and if you go where I used to live, we used to use traffic as our guide, and you wouldn't want to live in that quality of life. So I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, but just I think trying to say this town can only absorb, or this it's a really tough thing, because you really are going out of a quality of life, and what we experience here on our levels of service that we find are acceptable aren't really the normal, the standards that.
Right. Well, if I could just take a little bit of a higher level approach with this, and that is, at least the majority of this council, if not previous councils as well, have been concerned and conflicted about more growth in order to get more affordable housing, the traffic implications that are there, the capacity issues that are there. And I think it is more a quality of life issue than anything else. And honestly, if we could get 180 houses and have 100% of them be affordable housing, I think it would be an easier nut for some of us to swallow. I'm on my way out the door. I don't see that coming, but I could swallow 180 houses a lot easier if it was 100% affordable housing. But that isn't how it works. You get 75 or 80% of the people who are in houses that are not affordable to teachers, and then you only get 20 or 25 that are. So how many more houses do you have to build at only 25% at a time? So, and the other thing is all the major issue that I think most of us deal with when it comes to quality of life concerns is the traffic, and the only way to deal with that is on a regional basis, and the only people that are able to deal with that is RAFTA, because they are a regional government. So they do look at traffic and the needs for transit all the way from one end of the valley to the other. And until we get to the point where we're able to do that, we're not going to be able to measure it, because it's like water. It's like a river. You can't put a wall up on the edges of Basalt and say that's where the problem begins and ends, because it isn't. So just know that we wrestle with this. We wrestle with this, Jerry. It's not easy, but I think we're trying to get to a moderate approach and to something that people can live with. And also, this is just a master plan. It is not a legal defining thing. If it gets to the point where future elected boards decide that we can't hack 180 units there, or 500 here, like 300, they'll make a different decision, but it will take a lot of pain. Take a lot of pain to stop this, and we're not even near that pain. We are all still very happy people living wonderful lives here, right? So, yeah.
I think if I might add too, there's a lot more to the master plan, and this goes a little bit to Jerry's comments as well, than just the future land use map, than just the development potential. And I will say, having been a part of the year-long input process, the goals and objectives portion of this document, I think, set it aside pretty uniquely from several of the master plans in the past. And I think as you dig into some of those, and that's the kind of challenge that I sort of hope to leave with as the consultant, is to arm you guys with a document that you get to dig into. And as you look at some of those objectives, the projects that are there, there's a lot to start to think about that doesn't necessarily require building your way out of the problem.
Yep.
I think it's going to take creativity and a lot of motivation, and a lot of aggregation of the absolutely incredible, passionate, smart, excited people in this community to dig into those things. But there's an incredible amount of meat to this master plan that is way beyond even just the future land use map and kind of those buildable areas. And that's a little bit of what I would love to leave with, because there's affordable housing ideas, and a lot of things to look at reflecting into the code that might allow for more of that density in kind of small areas. So I think there's been a lot of focus on those key and primary parcels, but there's a lot more to this document too that I know you guys.
Well, let me ask this. I hate to brainstorm right here in front of everyone, but maybe it would be an idea to put some of those chunks out onto like our Facebook page, a little at a time, because nobody in their right mind can absorb all this, okay, in a public meeting or any other way. But some of these not the maps, but some of the things you're talking about, maybe we could throw that out there with some graphics and some words about what else the master plan is. I think that would be more comprehensible for a lot of people.
I have a little different perspective because, the reality is I remember back in 2007 when we fought over the master plan. We fought between P&Z and council. It was not a pretty process. It was all about the future land use maps. And in the end, that master plan did not have a really strong vision for the town that this one does. Because this one really, we're really talking about just a couple parcels. I mean, really, truly, this is not a big deal. I do not see this. We're not changing our urban growth boundary really at all. And so it's not like this is going to create some massive new amounts of growth. It's not. What it's going to do, and what I really, really like about it, and this is why I am pushing to get it through sooner than later, is because it's not the end. The master plan is just the beginning. It's really, truly sets in motion action items that the town will work on over the next 5 to 10 years to really try to address some of the issues and some of the goals that this plan stakes out. Sustainability, the amount of, we didn't even talk about that in 2007. We talked about like building sustainability and stuff like that, but not the way we're talking about it now. We're trying to find solutions to at least this areas to really address climate change and really truly address, sustainability of our rivers and water and you name it. So this master plan is so much better. And I agree with Jackie that we should kind of just tell people it's more. Stop worrying about, that's why I think in the end, and I think we're at a good spot with especially like the Meyer property, is let's not fight about that. Let's put it in gray. I know gray is kind of one of those colors, but let's put it in gray and really, we're not changing the urban growth boundary, but let's work with the family, the county, and the town to see what can happen there. And yes, I totally agree. My kid goes to school here, and I love the fact that he can walk. And I really love some of his teachers, and I wish some of them stayed that left. And I would love to find, Jackie and I went to the school board when they were talking about the school bond, and we went there and basically asked them to put that $20 million on the bond. And they did, because the community needed it. And so the great thing is there's an opportunity for all of us to work together to try to get these goals. Affordable housing is a huge issue. A lot of the density bonuses on any of these properties, even the ones that are infill in the town today, the density bonuses, most of them have there. You can get more density, but it can't be the old school, you get 20% affordable, 80% not. It's got to go up, and that will start addressing things. It's got to provide community benefits. And so, I wrote a ton of notes of what some of you guys were talking about, and really, truly, I think the master plan addresses a lot of what I heard. And even though, Jerry, you were being negative, I think it addresses a lot of the things. Yeah, you might not want any growth, but a redevelopment of the Clark's Market area addresses a lot of community needs. I mean, in that, it says that we need to have affordable housing as part of that. Parking in downtown is a problem. This can help potentially solve some of that. As long as I'm on this, we're not going to put buildings any closer than the town code allows to a river. And so they might look close, but they're still significantly far away. I mean, the reality is you could keep the hotel where it is, and it's right on the river. But hopefully, if we can do a future development and incentivize this stuff, we can get the goals that the town wants. And truly, I think what a lot of people are starting to realize, it's like, we're not really the small town that we thought we were back in 2000, 2007. We grew. I mean, Willits is building out. Next to Willits, we'll have another pretty large development. We are not a small town anymore, but we could keep a quality of life and a character that really still makes you feel like it's a relatively small town. And so I really believe that there are a lot of the things in here, trying to connect our communities better with a connector shuttle. All these things are awesome ideas, and if we can get this passed and get this out there, then the next council doesn't have to wrestle with this again, and really can then take this and start implementing it. Because I look at some of the stuff in 2007 that we wanted to implement, and a lot of it, for the most part, it happened in certain ways, shape, or form. This one will have a much farther reach, and I'm sorry I'm talking like a lot, because I really, everyone who spoke, especially a lot of the Myers who spoke, this master plan has what we want. And so we need to come together and not so worry about, is 80 the right number on Jadwin Stott? Because in the end, if we start just say with 80 or whatever we come up with, there's a big conversation that's going to happen, and it's going to take some time. And we put it in there. What you need, you've got to do this. To get to even that 80, you got to do this. And that's a significant upzoning over the current, allowed uses for Picken County or Eagle County. So, I think there's a lot of potential with Jadwin and Stott, and I think the future councils will wrestle with that. There's nothing we can do to really play with it too much. 60 units, 45. I mean, we could go down that. That's a rabbit hole that I don't think it's worth fighting over for that one parcel. And then the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park, I like that it's gray, because I really think that's another one that we have to have a pretty large conversation with, if it's a new owner, but with Eagle County and Picken County, because it splits right almost in the middle. And it's a big conversation that we need to have on that one. And I think the master plan sets it up well to have it, and it sets the goals to have it. So I'll stop talking, but I really believe that we can move forward on this master plan. I believe that if we get it in place, this will be a much bigger improvement. And I want to thank the community, because the reality is, over the last 11 months, the amount of people that showed up, a lot of people that I know that you are busy, they're not gonna come to a meeting tonight, they got kids, and they're just not gonna come, but they participated in that master plan. And the people I've talked to are like, yeah, sounds good. You kinda took what I said. It's not perfect, but no plan will be. And I wanna also thank P and Z, because you guys are the ones who sat through a lot of this and really started to drill down on this, and you spent a lot of meetings, so it's really, I appreciate it. I really thank you. I think, Bill, you're the only one here. No, Rob, there he's back there, sorry.
And Bernie was here.
And Bernie was here, but I just appreciate that work, because it takes a lot of pressure off the council. And in the end, Basalt's unique, because usually it's just P and Z that adopts master plans. In Basalt, our charter has us both adopt it. And I think this one might be one that we can adopt the same plan, and it won't be different. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'd like to keep it moving, and that's my personal opinion. So, thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody else have a speech?
Very well said, Gary.
Yes.
That's a difficult one to follow. To make it clear, we started out of looking for an aspirational master plan, and I really am experiencing that. What has informed the aspirations are the multiple public input opportunities, but really what it also comes down to is the strategic work plan and our Basalt vision and values. From a organizational standpoint, Basalt has done so much work in the last 4 years with our staff and with our council and in all of our committees. And we're making it clearer what is the vision and can we all get behind this vision? And that is informing the master plan at the same way that the public is informing the master plan. And know that we are negotiating for our entire community. So when I was elected 4 years ago, I didn't know much about this. Gary's been through master plan, Katie's been through master plan, Jackie's been through master, oh, you haven't, okay, Katie hasn't been through master plan. But in the 4 years, many of the applications that came to us, I did see that our previous master plan was lacking, and going through this process, this one is so far more dynamic. And again, it was aspirational and informed by our entire community and all of our process. So I'm so grateful for that. I think we're getting really close. I'm feeling good about the congealing of where we're coming with this. And I hope that the whole community can feel that way too.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Well, I do not have much to add. You guys have really covered it all. Thank you.
That's why I talk so much.
I appreciate that because I'm not a big talker. I want to say since was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago when we had our last master plan meeting, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is never going to happen. And the past 2 weeks, I feel like Heather and your team and our staff have taken this from like, oh, there's so much that needs to be worked on, to we can definitely do this in the next few weeks. And so thank you so much for listening to so many different opinions, so many like, oh wow, like so many different spectrums of 7 opinions. And you've really brought it to a document that I'm not 100% there, but I'm really close, especially from several weeks ago. And so I want to thank you all for all the time that you have placed and listening to us and working with P&Z and the community. And I'm feeling so much more comfortable with this, and that this is going to be able to be adopted in the next several weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. I think pretty much everyone has spoken who wanted to speak, right? And just in case you missed it, we really, really care about this a lot. It was something that we didn't want to leave for the next round, which is going to happen in a couple of months here, because we're the ones who have been working on this and feel like it's sort of our baby. So to Jerry's point of, I hope people don't feel like we're rushing it through. I don't feel like we are really. It's been a long time getting to this point. So the plan is that we're going to continue this to March 10, right? So at this point, I would ask for a motion.
I move that the town council continue the public hearing to March 10th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for hanging in. That's what the candy was
So I
for.
just wanted to lay out one other thing on schedule. So we have this, continued to Tuesday, March 10th, we're gonna have a work session at 5 o'clock with the P and Z, and then you're gonna continue the public hearing.
Okay,
So that's
great.
your next step.
All right, we're adjourned.
Okay, you start.
Good job, Gary.